Hello, I'm very excited to start our first Bible Story Basics video. I hope that these about 10-minute videos are a great way to bring more Christian education into your homes. Now let me be clear. These videos are not intended to be a replacement for Sunday school. Sunday school remains a very important experience in the faith formation and growth of your child. However, due to COVID-19 and understanding the very busy family schedules that we all have, I hope that these videos are a touch point for you and your family as your child continues to grow. A few things to know before we start our video. First, at some point in the video, you will probably see this screen. This pause screen gives you an opportunity to pause the video and do an activity or answer a question with your child. Below the video on the church's website, which is the best place to find the video, you will also see two buttons, typically, for printouts. These printouts go along with each story, and if you have a way to print them out prior to watching it with your child, please do so. If you can't print for whatever reason, then maybe you can pull up the printout on a tablet or a cell phone, and your child can see the printout as they watch the video. And if there's something they need to write or draw on the printout and it's on a tablet or phone, then just have them write that on a blank piece of paper. One last thing before we start our first video. During each lesson, your child will create or draw something. I would love to see what your child creates. Please take a picture and send that to me, and I will share that with our congregation in a number of different ways. Also, I'm learning what works and what doesn't in these videos. So please let me know. Give me some feedback on what works for your child, what they really enjoy, and what points of the video they may have lost interest. We are all growing together in this experience. I think with that is my last bit of information for you to know. So let's go ahead and start our first Bible Story Basics. So today we're going to be talking about Joseph. Joseph from the first part of the Bible. You see, Joseph is also Jesus' father, but the Joseph we're going to be talking about actually is from the book of Genesis. But before we get into really Joseph's story, one thing you should know is that we're going to be talking about Joseph's time in Egypt. And so what I'd like for you to do is to take a look at the first printout, and there is a maze on there. Either take a pen or a pencil, or maybe even just your finger, and follow that maze and see if you can help Joseph navigate around Egypt. Joseph had 11 brothers, 11, and his dad was named Jacob. Jacob had another name also, Israel, and his sons would come to make up the 12 tribes of Israel. Joseph was the youngest brother, and he was favored by his dad, and his dad gave him a special coat. It was a coat that is often called a coat of many colors, but it also could mean that it was just a long coat, which meant that Joseph was most likely going to be working inside and his brothers would be tending the flock of sheep outside. And Joseph liked to brag to his brothers that he was greater than them, and he told them about these dreams he had where they bowed down to him. And eventually his brothers got really mad and they decided something really crazy. They were going to kill Joseph. But one of his brothers talked them out of it, and instead of killing him, they decided to sell him as a slave to some men who were headed to Egypt. And that is how Joseph found himself in Egypt. And that's where our story picks up today. Joseph is in Egypt and he's bought by a man named Potiphar. And Potiphar worked in the Pharaoh, which is like the king, in his house. And Joseph was a really good slave. He took care of Potiphar's house, and he made it so that Potiphar didn't have to think about anything. Joseph was also attractive, and this made Potiphar's wife be attracted to him. And so she tried to become involved with Joseph in a way that he didn't want. And he knew that Potiphar would be upset. Eventually, this led to Potiphar's wife, who's never named, saying that Joseph had hurt her. And so Potiphar put Joseph in jail. And while he was in jail, 2 other men were in the jail with him. One was the wine steward for the Pharaoh, and one was the bread keeper, the bread maker for the Pharaoh. And they each had a dream while they were in jail, and they told Joseph about this dream. And Joseph, who knew that God was with him and that God had given him an ability to interpret dreams, told them what their dreams meant. The wine steward's dream was that before him was a bush, and there on the bush were 3 branches. And from those 3 branches, when they budded and they put out their flower and blossomed, grapes grew from them. And he had Pharaoh's cup, and he took those grapes and he crushed them into the cup, and he handed the cup to Pharaoh. And Joseph told him that this dream meant that in 3 days the Pharaoh would see the wine steward, and that he would be put back in his position, and he would be taken out of jail. And Joseph told him to remember him whenever this happened, so that Joseph could also get out of jail. The bread steward, the bread maker, his dream also had 3 loaves of bread in it. And Joseph told him that in 3 days he would also be seen by the Pharaoh, but the Pharaoh would not take him out of jail. Instead, he would kill him. And 3 days passed, and both of the men were taken to the Pharaoh, and the wine steward was given his position back and taken out of jail, and the bread maker was killed by the Pharaoh. But the wine steward didn't remember Joseph, and Joseph stayed in jail. But Joseph knew that through all of this, through his time in jail, God was with him. I want to ask you a question. I wonder what Joseph felt when he was put in jail. How do you think you would feel if you ended up in jail? If you were Joseph and you were put in jail, or you suffered in some way, do you think you would remember that God is with you? Today we're going to be making something to help us remember that God is always with us. We are going to make something called a God's eye. And a God's eye is from a lot of Mexican cultures where we find many of these. And it is a way to help us remember that God is always with us. And so I'm going to show you how to make a God's eye. In order to make a God's eye, what you'll need is 2 sticks. And what I've done with these popsicle sticks is glued them together. You also need some yarn. And you take the end of your yarn and you wrap it around the middle of the sticks. And you wrap that around a few times until it doesn't move whenever you tug on it. And then you will do the same thing the other direction until it doesn't move. And then you'll need to begin the pattern. So you wrap it around one of the sticks and then move to the next one, sort of in a circle. And you keep wrapping around until you have the pattern. You just wrap around one of the sticks and then move around to the next one. And you'll see with a little closer look here that this, whenever you do this, you want to try to line up the pieces of yarn next to each other so that there's no gap in between. You'll see I'm having a little difficulty here. But you don't want any room in between. That's what makes your pattern look really nice. And so you keep wrapping and wrapping. And if you'd like to change colors at some point, you can do that easily by taking and cutting the end of your yarn. And then what I recommend is actually not what I do here, but I recommend just tying on the new color to that piece of yarn. You'll see that I try to wrap around and sort of tie it on the back. This turned out to be a little bit more of a challenge than I thought it would be. You'll see that I fail miserably here. But you just tie on your new piece of yarn and begin to wrap it in the same way. in the same pattern. And as you do this, I encourage you to think about how God is always with you. That's what this symbolizes. And I encourage you to take this God's eye once you've completed it and put it in a place that you'll see, and let it be a reminder that God is always with you. You can do as many colors as you like. You'll see that I actually add a new color here, yellow on the outside. You just keep wrapping and wrapping as wide as you'd like to make it. And then you just tie the end off on the back, and there you have it. One God's eye. So I hope you'll remember, just like Joseph did, that God is always with you. No matter where you are or what you've done, God loves you, and God is always there. I hope you've enjoyed this first Bible Story Basics video, and we'll see you next week when we continue to talk about Joseph.